Several LA area transit corridors are busy enough to deserve rail transit of some form. Two of those transit corridors, in my opinion, are the ones on Venice and Pico Boulevards. So, let's talk about what such a line for Venice and Pico Boulevards might look like. The westernmost stop would be at Venice Boulevard and Pacific Avenue. The proposed train line would take you right to the beach. Venice Beach, that is. The beach connection would be valuable, especially in the summer. There'd then be a stop at Abbot Kinney Boulevard. The stop would provide easy access to the commercial corridor on Abbot Kinney Boulevard, as well as access to a bus route that heads to UCLA. I'd then have a stop at Lincoln Avenue. It's a stop that would provide a connection to a bus that goes between downtown Santa Monica and LAX. The following stop, at Centinela Avenue, would serve the Mar Vista neighborhood. Also, if I pronounce Centinela incorrectly, please go easy on me. I tried to figure this one out. There would then be a stop at Sepulveda Boulevard. If I got my way with transit dreams, this would connect to a phase 2 of a Sepulveda Boulevard heavy rail line that goes to LAX. But alas, that is not the world we live in. So I guess we'll have to settle for bus connections, for now. The following two stops would be at Overland Avenue and Hughes Avenue. Both of these stops are near the boundaries of Culver City, but both stops are technically within the Palms neighborhood of Los Angeles. These are stops that serve census tracts that house somewhere between 29,000 people per square mile and 38,000 people per square mile. Absolutely population densities that justify heavy rail, let alone the light rail I'm proposing here. For context, there are only a few census tracts with that sort of population density along the D-line extension. And that is despite the D-line being extended along LA's most important corridor. The next stop, going east, would be at the current Culver City stop for the E-line. Though, given the proximity of the previous two stops to city limits for Culver City, I might recommend renaming this stop to Culver Junction. In a way, the renaming of this stop to Culver Junction is turning back the clock a bit. This area has been referred to as Culver Junction before because two interurban rail lines intersected where the present-day Culver City station is. One of them was called the Santa Monica Airline, which ran a lot of the present-day E-Line's trackage. And the other was the Venice Short Line, which ran along Venice Boulevard. As such, this video proposes reviving a rail junction. Anywho, I should continue talking about this line before I go any deeper down any historical rabbit holes. I'd have a stop at Fairfax Avenue. Aside from bus connections offered here, it's also not far from the Kaiser Permanente West Los Angeles Medical Center. Per Kaiser Permanente themselves, there are 3,150 employees who work there. And there'd be further ridership from people with appointments there, families of patients there, and so on. I'd have a stop at La Brea Avenue, about 1.5 miles beyond the previous stop. Population density is fine, I guess, but the important thing with this stop is connecting to the bus line on La Brea. The following stop would be at Midtown Crossing. This is the stop that would connect to the future K-Line Northern Extension, whenever that's built. Somewhere in or near the Midtown Crossing area, I bring the line from Venice Boulevard to Pico Boulevard. But why Pico? And why did Pico here? Well, first, east of Midtown Crossing, population density seems to be higher by Pico than by Venice. and this population density gap gets rather wide as you get closer to downtown LA. Second, I will eventually want to connect to the Pico stop on the A and E lines, so getting to Pico was rather inevitable. And third, it's over by Midtown Crossing, where you can cover the least distance in going from running on Venice to running on Pico. So, anywho, now that we've established why I want to bring my proposed line over to Pico, I should talk about my next proposed stop, which would be at Pico Boulevard and Crenshaw Boulevard. The proposed train line would connect with LA Metro's Line 210 on Crenshaw Boulevard. The following stop would be at Pico Boulevard and Western Avenue. By this point of the route, we'd be more consistently serving parts of the line with extremely high population density. That theme continues with the stop at Pico Boulevard and Normandy Avenue. Thankfully, we've moved the line from Venice to Pico, because if we had a Venice Normandy stop, we'd have a stop by a literal cemetery. And last time I checked, dead people don't take public transit. I'd then have a stop at Pico Boulevard and Vermont Avenue. Hopefully, one day, a Vermont Avenue subway line can stop here. But, in the interim, a stop here would connect to one of the busiest transit corridors in all of LA. There would then be a stop at Alvarado Street. Much like the previous stops on Pico, this would serve a densely populated area. And it would also intersect with LA Metro's Line 2, one of the busier bus lines. The last of the stops before heading to downtown LA would be at Union Avenue. And then, this line, as promised, would connect to the Pico stop on the A and E lines. The stop is also near the LA Convention Center and the Crypto.com Arena. After connecting to the A and E at Pico, I have a decision to make. The decision: what do I do with this line? Ultimately, I decided to have the line head towards Main Street, and then turn onto Main Street, thus serving a corridor in downtown LA that currently has no rail line. The first of those stops would be at Olympic Boulevard. This stop would be right on the edge of LA's Fashion District. The second of them would be at 6th Street, and the third of them would be at 1st Street. This stop would provide easy access to local government offices, such as LADOT, LA City Hall, and LAPD. And from there, the line would then head to Union Station, at which point it would combine with the San Gabriel Valley line I proposed. This proposal, along with the San Gabriel Valley line, would combine for a single transit line that goes from Venice Beach to El Monte. I should also add that at Union Station, there'd be connections to the A, B, and D lines. And that is my proposed line for Venice and Pico Boulevards. It's a proposal that would consist of 22 stops, if I counted correctly. As for my thoughts on this proposed line, let's first talk about stop placements. On the topic of stop placements, I feel good about most of them. Keyword: most. There are a few stop placements that feel a little off to me, and I'd like to hear in the comment section below what you think of these placements. One of them is in the area of Midtown Crossing. Like, do I really think we need stops at La Brea and Crenshaw when we already have this Midtown Crossing stop? In this current version of my LA Metro map, on Metro Dreaming, I say yes, because of the bus connections those proposed rail stops would offer. What gives me the slightest bit of hesitation, however, is that I know LA Metro prefers 1 mile or so spacing between most of their rail stations. And if we had stops at La Brea and Crenshaw in addition to Midtown Crossing, we would not get that sort of spacing. The other stop placement I'm a little hesitant about is my first street stop in downtown LA. On one hand, it's really tempting to have a stop that literally passes by some major city government offices. On the other hand, the two rail stops close to this proposed stop, Civic Center Grand Park on the B and D lines and Historic Broadway on the A and E lines, are not the highest performing of stations in downtown LA. This begs a question. If we had a first street stop for my line, in addition to the existing stations, might we be oversaturated on stations in this part of LA? I'm down to hear viewers' opinions on that question in the comment section below. In terms of the line's path as a whole, I am very much aware that most of this route is near the 10. And, because of that, I would sell this route as an alternative to the freeway. That's one reason I like this route and its path. The second reason for this path is that I want to facilitate as many options as possible for traveling in the LA area. In a polycentric metropolis like LA, I value this deeply. And by maximizing rail line connections, you do that. Better yet, this proposed line does that without adding yet another line to the 7th Street Metro Center station. And the third reason is that ridership with this line, in addition to being significant, would be relatively well balanced between east of downtown and west of downtown. To highlight this, here's the ridership on line 33, which runs on Venice. And here's the ridership on line 70, which runs on Garvey Avenue for the most part, the street where I'd have several stops for my proposed San Gabriel Valley line. Based on this data, transit demand is a bit higher on line 33 than on line 70, but the demand is relatively even between these two lines, especially on weekdays. Why is this important? Because you'd cause headaches for transit schedulers if the part of the line on one side of downtown LA is vastly different demand-wise from the part of the line on the other side of downtown. At that point, you'd have to consider things like terminating some trains in downtown. But, given the relatively even distribution of demand, we might not have to worry about that here. Speaking of demand, I'd expect demand for this line to be quite significant, if it ever came to fruition. How significant? Well, I wouldn't be surprised if ridership for this line, if built, would be competitive with ridership for the E line. And, for whatever it's worth, Metro Dreaming's ridership projections seem to agree with me here, also showing ridership for this line being competitive with the E line. But what do you think of my proposed line for Venice and Pico? Let me know in the comment section below. Make sure to also like this video and subscribe to my channel for more content on imagining better mass transit in the United States. Thank you, and have a good day.